time. Hello, and welcome to Into the Liminal Abyss Paranormal Podcast. I am your host, Shetan Noir, and on today's episode, I am talking to Mr. Jamie Foster. Jamie, can you please tell us more about your background and your history with encounters?
Well, I'm 44 years old, and I started having encounters with cryptids when I was about 14 years old. It all started with me and a buddy went squirrel hunting in some property north of my mom's place. And when we got back into the woods, it was still dark. It was early morning. Something started to growl at us and circle us. And it stomped the ground so hard when it circled us that the ground shook underneath our feet. And I didn't notice any kind of smell. It was still kind of cold out. But we did notice, like I said, the vibration under our feet and the grunting and the growling. We went ahead and got out of there. Buddy and I, my buddy was pretty upset, pretty shaken by it, and I was too, but I was focused on wanting to get home. So we walked back to back all the way home that morning. So it shook my friend up so bad that to this day he won't talk to me about it, and he's actually moved to Florida. And the only two times that I did try to get him to talk to me about what had happened, he got very upset with me and just told me to drop it. So kept me out of the woods for a few years until another friend of mine talked me into going deer hunting. And one of the first couple times that we went, I noticed that I was, I guess you could say, being parallel stalked in the woods up on the ridge. Every time I would walk, it would walk. If I would stop, it would stop. I tried to look for it. I was weaving in and out of trees, trying to see anything. Couldn't see nothing. And again, I couldn't really smell anything. It was bad. But it escorted me to the truck that day. So the other encounters that I've had have been mostly here in East Central Indiana. One encounter, which was probably the absolute scariest one we had, was in the middle of the day on my father-in-law's property in the back 40. I was metal detecting with a cousin of mine, and he was mushroom hunting, and it was a very nice day out. And I always take a camera with me, or I have my phone with a camera. And if I see something that doesn't make sense to me, I will take a picture of it. And that day I took pictures of bent over sapling trees over game trails and stuff, and X marks, and a couple little dome structures. They were kind of older ones. They'd been there for a while, and so on. So as we're in these little patch of woods, we started to the east, walking out of them along a tree line that separated two fields. And we got into the middle part of this tree line, and we were standing there just talking amongst ourselves. We weren't being loud or nothing. We just kind of like took a break. And I happened to look to the south of the field, and there's a tree line, a cornfield, and then another tree line, and then another field. Well, at the other tree line, and I'm guessing this has got to be 70 yards easily from where we were to where the other tree line was, I looked over and I saw this rock in the air, and it's coming towards us. And my cousin's still talking, and I'm just fixated on this rock in the air. I'm watching it, the arch of it going through the air, and it's coming down towards us, and I'm like just sitting there watching like, what in the world? And as the rock comes over, it lands behind my cousin within probably 3 feet. I mean, when it hit the ground, it was a thud. And my cousin scared him so bad he jumped up my arms.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, yeah.
That would make me
He
jump.
just, oh yeah, he jumped right up my arms. Like, what in the hell was that? And he jumped back down, looked over, and there's this rock about the size of a volleyball sitting there, indented into the ground. And he goes, what was that? Who threw that? And I was like, dude, there ain't nobody going to throw a rock that big 70 yards. And he just looked at me and said, I want to go. I want out of here. Let's go. And I said, well, don't start running. Let's just, you walk and I'll walk behind you and I'll keep an eye on our backside. And we got out of there. So that property had a couple other things that went on. My father-in-law had 2 dogs on that property, okay? One of them was a female German Shepherd. And I feel really, really bad about this one because I was going to go ahead and take her home with us because my father-in-law, his wife had passed away and he kind of moved out of the house, so the property was a little vacant. So people were just kind of coming and going, family members and stuff. And this German Shepherd, she was a female. She was good size, but the previous owners had treated her pretty bad. But she took a liking to me, and I told my wife, I said, I think I'm going to probably just go down and get her, and we'll just keep her. Because we had a nice fenced-in backyard, and she could have been okay and safe. So the day that I was going to go over there and get her, she was gone. Now, the pen that she was in, the kennel, was probably 6 foot by 10 or 12. It had a doghouse in it, chain link fence. It's probably 6, 7 feet tall. But it had a big, heavy wooden gate on the front of it, okay? Like one of them big Gothic gates that are like an inch thick wood, 2x4s and all that, 4x4 posts in the ground. And it was a locked gate. It only locked from the outside. And it had a handle on it, a good-sized handle. Well, that gate was ripped off that kennel. It was laying about 10 feet back from where we just walked to from the barn to get to her, and she was gone.
Oh,
there
wow.
was no blood, no hair, no struggle, just gone. But the gate was ripped from the hinges off the post. He had another dog that was there on the property, was on the other side of the barn. It was what we called a mutt dog. He's probably 30, 40 pounds or less. He was on a big chain. He had a dog house that was up underneath the lean-to of the barn. And this pole that the chain was hooked to was easily 4 foot in the ground, if not more. Well, the dog, the chain, and the pole were gone. So I told my father-in-law about all this, and he just was, he didn't know what to say. He goes, I have no idea. He said, I don't know. So that was a real strange encounter there, happening, I guess. And this all took place within just a couple months of each other, of us getting the rock thrown at us, then the dogs. One strange thing about that property, the day that we had the rock thrown at us, I had taken pictures like I always do, and on this game trail I took a picture of a sapling that was bent over, and it had like a log and I think maybe a rock laid on the end of it to hold it down on the other side. And in that picture there was a black matted mass on a tree. It was probably about 3-4 foot up on this tree. And I thought, man, what is that? I've never seen that before. So I went down to the store and I bought a magnifying glass. And I was looking at it through a magnifying glass. And it looked like matted black hair. So I've heard stories over the years that, Bigfoot will freeze. They'll stand, when they think they're being looked at or caught, they'll just kind of stand still and try to, behind a tree or blend in, So I stared at this thing. I bet I stared at that picture for 20 minutes. And I just sit there and I thought, okay, what if, and I'm just going off on a limb here, okay, what if that was a baby squatch and we got too close and Mama had enough of us and she threw a rock?
That very could well be because I mean we know bears will go to any extreme to protect their babies. I couldn't imagine that a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch would be any different.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I think too. I think that we just gotten too close, and um, she just had enough, and you know, got rid of us. Don't want us to get off the property. And I think, looking back on things over the years and trying to think things through, I think that those two dogs became meals because I have a strong belief that we have some Sasquatch that come through our area every so often. And it's usually fall through winter. And things happen. I've had other people come to me with encounters and things they've seen and heard, things they've found. But going back to the hunting trip, on another occasion that we were at this place was a public land that we hunted on. I was walking out one day after about a 6-hour hunt. We got there kind of late that day, and we stayed for about 6 hours, and we were split up. And I was walking down this trail. It's a 4x4 trail that leads east and west through the property. And I'm walking through, and I still had my bow and arrow. They were still, in ready position in case I was hoping that a buck would step out in front of me. And there we go. And I'm walking through, and I keep hearing this whistling. And I stopped, and I was looking around thinking, who's whistling? Somebody's here. And then I hear this real hard whistle of like, look over this way. And I look down to my left, laying in the ditch, there's a guy in a ghillie suit. And he's got an AR-15 laying across his lap.
That would be, I would probably be turning around and walking back to my car at that point.
Well, this is where it gets real interesting. I'm looking at this dude. I don't see a face or nothing. I'm just staring at him thinking, what in the world are you doing out here with that? And he takes his right arm, he grabs the left part of his ghillie suit, pulls it back, and shows me a DNR badge.
Oh, okay.
And then he points at me, and then points to the west like, get. And I just undid my bow and arrow, gave him a little wave, and I took off. Don't know what he was doing laying back there in the weeds, who he was waiting on or what he was waiting on. But he wanted me out of there. So
that's really interesting because your imagination runs wild of what was he after or who was he after? Was he after poachers? Was he after a dangerous animal? Or after a Bigfoot or something like that? So that's, I don't know, I might have asked, I might have stopped and said, what are you after?
Well, yeah, I probably could have done that, but I think maybe I'd have probably made him even madder.
Yeah.
I've talked with DNR before. I've showed them pictures of things that footprints. I have pictures of scat, and I actually have the scat in my freezer at home frozen. And I've looked it up. I've checked every known North American mammal scat, and nothing comes close to what I have. At all. Nothing.
Now, the whistling would have, to me, I would have been curious about the whistling, too, because there are so many reports of the Bigfoots making whistling noises and bird noises. And I wonder if the DNR officer was making all the whistles or if they were communicating with one and it was an exchange.
Well, he was the one whistling. After a few seconds, I got it figured out. Oh, okay, you're the one whistling. Got you now. Okay. But, you mentioned something about making the bird noises and stuff, like, what they call the sonic bird. Have you ever heard of that before?
I have, and I've talked to so many people who do in-field Bigfoot research, and they say if you know the local birds and you know what sounds they make, and then you get into an area and everything goes quiet except you start hearing these strange bird calls, or you start feeling like you're getting a static charge, but you're still hearing the bird calls. That's a Sasquatch or one of the bipedal primates, and they're communicating with each other, but they're doing it in a way that they're hoping humans don't pick up on. In that they're making bird calls, but it's bird calls that are not typical for the species that you would have in the area that you are.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've heard the sonic bird quite a bit out here where I live. I heard it the other night, and I heard it 2 nights ago, 2 nights last week. So we let our dog out the back. He's on a run, but sometimes I'll stand out there with him, and I'll just listen and look around, and you can hear it. It's in the woods behind my house, and there's no birds out there. There's no animals making any more noises, and all of a sudden you'll hear this strange bird whistling and bird calling, whatever you want to call it. It's weird, and it'll go on for 3-4 minutes or more. So it's strange, and like I said, where I live at, seems like fall through winter until almost the end of winter, we have strange things go on. I've captured a lot of footprints. I've got pictures of footprints galore. Last year, not 2019, but 2018 in the winter, I captured a handprint. I think it's a handprint. If it's a footprint, it's the weirdest footprint I've ever seen. But I've got a picture of a huge handprint that was on my side property that I have next to my house that we purchased in the snow. Like something had knelt down behind my trailer and was trying to stay out of sight.
Well, the increased activity in from the fall into the wintertime makes sense, because what I believe they do is I don't believe they stay in one area. I think they follow the food sources. So as deer migrate into from grazing pastures into cornfields, and then they're hunkering down more into sheltered areas where they have access to food, water, and shelter. The squatches are following them. So most deer, at least up here in Michigan, they will go through the local orchards and have their feast of apples and pears and whatever else they can, fallen fruit that they can get from the trees. And then they're moving into the cornfields that are typically harvested in, the later fall, but also like squashes and stuff like that, pumpkins. The deer, if they can get an easy meal, if anything can get an easy meal, they'll take it. So I believe that the Bigfoots, they have a migratory path that they follow year round, and it's basically them following the deer herds, and where the deer go, the squatches and especially the dogmen also go, and so they just follow the herd, and they are opportunists. They're going to eat whatever the other animal species are going to eat, but if they can grab a deer and have a feast, they're going to. But they also, they will go after turkeys. They will go after, just about anything that they can catch, and that can be a food source.
Yeah, I agree with you totally on that. And the other thing with where I live at, we have a big river that's not too far. It's due east of my house about 2.5, 3 miles, and then it just kind of flows to the area out there, goes east and west, and it's a good sized river. And I'm pretty certain they're following that all the time when they come through. It's just, it's strange, the things that go on. Like this year, I've not seen hardly any rabbits in the neighborhood. Cats are gone completely, and the people that had their dogs that kind of just ran wherever, I don't see them. I don't hear them. Now, this winter, like on December the 15th, I had an encounter when I came home. And this is really weird. I was listening to Paranormal Roundtable with Josh Turner, and they were talking about dogmen and different types of stuff they have in Texas and around the world and all this, and he was talking about the hyena type and how the calls and sounds they make and stuff like that. I got home. I won't forget this. I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was the damnedest thing I'd ever heard. It's 7:30. I backed my truck into the driveway. I got out, and I was walking towards the house to the sidewalk. I was still on my driveway. It's in the middle part of the driveway. There's nobody around. It's a quiet neighborhood. I live on a dead-end street. We got woods are behind me, and then we got a field to the south, and then a little patch of woods over to the east. I hear, and I kid you not, a hyena laugh. 2 big laughs. And I just froze in my steps. The neighbor that lives 3 doors down from me has one dog that they keep chained up in the back, in the fenced-in area. It took a couple barks, and then it took a couple crying yelps, and then I didn't hear him the rest of the night. But this hyena laugh was crystal clear. And I was like, and I just listened to Josh the night before on that, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. Did I just really hear that? I mean, I stood out in the driveway probably 5-10 minutes, doubting myself, then telling myself, yeah, you did hear that. And then I stood there and real quiet trying to listen, and then I finally just went in the house. And I have never in my life heard anything like that anywhere. That was just, and it, like I said, it was loud, and it was just crystal clear, brisk. You know what I mean? It was just right there, like it would have been 20, 30 feet from me. That's how it felt to me.
Wow, that's pretty close.
Yeah, that's how it felt to me. So a week goes by. We finally get some snow. I'm back in again, and my headlights they light up the street, the yard across the street from me. The house is abandoned. The old lady passed away in the house, and the family's doing real slow renovation. Nobody's living in it. And I see a bunch of tracks all in the park and all in her yard, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get out and take a look at these. So I got out and I started looking at them, and I'm thinking, man, those kind of look like the ones I took pictures of last year. So I went in the house, I grabbed a tape measure, and I laid the tape measure out from print to print, and in some instances it was a 4-foot stride, in other instances it was a 5-foot stride. So I followed them. They went through the park, they went through her property, they got to the tree next to the road, and I didn't see them no more. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't walk any further, and I should have walked. I should have looked for them, and I just thought maybe it went up a tree or it just turned around and went back, because there was prints everywhere, like it was running all over the place, almost like it was wanting to chase an animal or something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It could have very well, been chasing something, small, like a squirrel or a rabbit or something like that.
Yeah. So I took some pictures, left it at that. A couple days go by. I go over to the neighbor's house, because we have an elderly gentleman lives next to us. He lost his wife, and he's living in the house by himself, and we check on him. He's still a solid mind and body, And he told me, he said, did you hear anything the other night? I said, no. Why? He said, well, about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard something running around my house. The other night we had that snow, I said, okay. He said, I waited until the next day, and I got up and I went out and walking around the property, because it was close to my house. I found prints, and he said, you ain't going to believe this. And at this time, the snow had melted, okay? I mean, I couldn't tell in the grass if there had been a print there or not. But he told me, and he swears up and down, that he found prints that started at his privacy fence and led into the woods behind our property. And he said the stride was 12 foot long from print to print. And so I got to thinking, okay, he showed me where they started. So I walked around the other side of the fence, and I stood where they were, because he stood on the other side of the fence, and I just kind of looked back towards the east, towards the park, towards that tree where I stopped looking at the prints, and I stood there and I thought, okay, wait a minute. Let's say that thing was on a full run. He come around that tree, crossed the road, ran through his front yard, jumped easily over that 6-foot tall privacy fence, landed in his yard, and kept running into the woods. He was on a full stride one time he jumped that fence.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense because if you've ever seen like horses or dogs go over fences, they are usually at their full stride so that they can pick up momentum.
Yeah. And I kick myself to this day. I should have followed those prints. I should have went looking for some more. I should have walked around the neighborhood because I used to walk around the neighborhood. When we first got our dog, we got a rescue dog, and we got him 2 years ago. And we and him would go out in the middle of the night and walk. Now, I'd take my 45 with me, and I'd hear things, and he'd hear things, and he'd tuck his tail in his ear, and he'd cry a little bit. And we'd get on home, He'd hear things in the woods. He'd stop, and he'd look real intent to them woods. And we did hear an animal behind our house meet its demise one night, and it was bad. It was squalling. It was crying out. I sure didn't want to know what was getting a hold of it, so we just eased on back to the house. Now, we've got coyotes out there, and we've seen a bunch. I've seen a pack of coyotes, 30 of them in a pack before. I've seen them chase a doe down our street in the middle of summer. They were that freaking hungry. So we definitely have a coyote problem.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, last night I went out coyote hunting with a friend up a couple miles north of our property. I'll tell you about what happened last night too. But we also have, I don't know if you ever heard of this, coy dogs.
Yep, we have coyotes and fox around our house, and as a matter of fact, my mom has a female German Shepherd that when we went to pick her up from the gentleman who had her mom, they would only show us one puppy at a time, and they wouldn't show us the parents. So I always jokingly tell my mom that her German Shepherd's a coy dog, and when the coyotes come around our house, her dog will stand at the back, glass doors to go outside, and she'll watch for them. So I always say that she's looking for her coy dog family, and so I tease my mom that her German Shepherd's a coy dog.
Well, I'd heard of coy dogs growing up. Never really seen one. Never paid much attention to any of it anyways. Until last year, I about hit one on the road coming home from work. And he was a big boy. I mean, he'd have made a pit bull look like a miniature Dachshund. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
he was a monster of a dog.
My parents' two German Shepherds, they have a male and a female. The male tops out at 95. The female is 84, and the coyotes that we have in the woods around our house are actually as tall as the 95-pound male. So I'm guessing they have to be about 100 pounds or more. And those are coyotes, not wolves, because we're not northern enough to have the wolves here in Michigan. We're about lower 3/4 of the state.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, where we're at down here in East Central Indiana, these coyotes are decent sized. But there's 3 coy dogs that are running together. They're always seen together, except for this one night. And these other 2 might have been coming up behind this one, or they might have already been in front of him. But I had to lock my brakes up in order not to hit him. And he seemed like he didn't care. But he was, if I had to take a guess on his weight, he was every bit of 125 pounds, if not a little more. I mean, I was in shock. And my dumb butt gets out of the truck and takes my phone and turns the flashlight on. He's out, I could hear him kind of trotting out into the field. And I'm trying to see him, and I'm like down in the ditch, getting ready to walk up in the field. And I was like, you know what? You're dumb. You need to get back in the truck. There may be more out here. So I got back in the truck, and I just sat there and thought, man, that's a big dog. Lord, that thing was huge. Well, before that night happened, a lady that's a friend of mine, she lives over a couple miles west of where I almost hit this dog. And she said she came home one night, and there were 3 of them in the field south of her home. And she said they were huge. They were the biggest dogs she ever saw, and it scared her. And she told me, she said, well, I'll tell you what, if I wasn't able enough to park my car in the garage, have a garage door opener, pull in, shut it, and then know I'm being safe in the garage, I'm home. She goes, I would have turned around and went back into Muncie. Because I was scared to death to get out of the car. They were that big. They were looking at me. And she lost her cat, and she lost her dog, and they found a lot of antlers on their property and a lot of bones. And they've got like about a 10-acre woods maybe behind their house. So, but a lot of people have been talking about seeing these 3 dogs, big dogs, run together. So they run our area. They run a big portion of the northern part of the county. So, but it's full of wildlife up here. I'm telling you, I never thought it would be, but I've seen a lot of strange stuff. I've had a lot of people tell me a lot of stories about things. I've walked up on, I'm pretty certain was a coy dog. I walked up on one going to my blind one morning, and I pulled a gun on him, and he just sat there and looked at me like, really? And he kind of turned around and trotted off, and he was of a good size. He was reddish brown hair, and he was a big dog. He's big. And I just was walking to the blind and tall grass, and he just popped up right off, scared me to death, man. My heart never beat so fast. I couldn't believe how big he was. But he walked away from me. So, I've had people tell me, seeing Sasquatch in trees, sitting up on big branches or standing on top of a big branch looking down at them in the woods. I almost hit one. It's been 2 years ago. Me and my wife, a buddy of mine, and his wife, and that ex-wife now, we went out to dinner and went shopping. We were coming back home from another county that we were in, and it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and it's coming down this 2-lane highway, and I was running about 60 mile an hour, and everybody's kind of quiet. They're sitting there, and this, I don't know what else to explain it to you. It wasn't no damn deer. I know animals. I hunt. I scout. I hike around. I know the animals around this area. But this thing ran out in front of my truck. He did 2 strides, and he was across that road, and I almost hit him. If I'd have been going 5 more miles an hour, I would have hit him. And I'm telling you, this thing would have demolished our truck. I did not see above the hips. I didn't see his chest or his stomach or his face or head. And I didn't even really see his arms. I saw his legs, and they were just like he was a full sprint across that road. And I locked him up. My tread marks are still on that road to this day. I locked them up. Everybody threw forward, and everybody's freaking out. My wife's yelling at me, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you doing? And I said, I almost hit a Bigfoot. She said, oh, bullshit. And I said, no, honey, I'm dead serious. I went down to the next junction, which is just a few hundred yards down. I turned the truck around. I come back. I turned every light on we had. We got a big light bar that goes across the front of our truck, LED. I flipped that thing on. I pulled down in the field, and I started to get out. My wife said, get back in the truck. I want to go home. Let's get out of here. Because it was a dark area where we were at. But that's where it was running. It was running west to east. And it crossed a 2-lane highway in 2 strides. Boom, boom, gone. See ya. He was history that fast. And I told my buddy, he was sitting beside me, I said, did you see that? And he said, no, man, I was kind of half out of it. He goes, I was just kind of tired. And I said, I asked my wife if she saw anything. I asked his wife. Nobody saw it but just me. Of course, like I said, everybody's kind of laid back in the truck and, relaxing, half asleep probably. So, but it was big. All I saw was his legs. He was a big boy, and he was full bore running.
Yeah, I didn't have one cross the road in front of me, but as I was going on, this was up in northern Minnesota, but as I was going up onto an on-ramp from a 2-lane up to onto a 4-lane, I was in a Jeep Wrangler at the time, and my headlights, if you know how wide a Jeep Wrangler is, the legs of this thing were just inside of each one of the headlights. and the legs were like tree trunks covered in black, I don't want to say shaggy fur, but it definitely wasn't. There's no trees right there, and it wasn't a smooth velvet like a moose's legs, and it wasn't like a bear's legs, but the blackish brown, shaggy fur, and wherever the head and shoulders of this creature, were was above where my head was in the Jeep. So, and I only got a 10-second view of him as I was going, onto the on ramp and coming up and around onto the 4-lane highway. But, I did like you did. As soon as I was up on the 4-lane, I hit my brakes and was like, did I just see what I think I saw? And I'm in a soft-sided Jeep, and part of me saying, go back down and get pictures of it, and the other side saying, you idiot, you're in a soft-sided Jeep. How are you going to explain it if your Jeep gets flipped over by this creature? So I think a lot of people have, roadside, uh, sightings of these creatures, and we only get a quick, glimpse of them. And I do a lot of traveling as part of my job with doing travel writing, and I do a lot of back roads, so I generally have my dash cam on. So anytime, and it's funny because when I have the dash cam installed and running and recording, I never get anything. But I tell you, you turn it off for 5 minutes, and that's when everything in the forest comes out to have a play alongside the road.
Yeah, isn't that how it always works? I mean, it's just there was 4 of us in there, and I'm the only one that saw it. So and we have a 2014 GMC Silverado, and I'm sitting in the driver's seat, and what I would assume was his hips where his legs were, and he wasn't a big one, I mean, like thick and fat or nothing. He was brown hair, and he was skinny. He had skinny legs. What it reminded me of was messing with Sasquatch. Those commercials where he's running and stuff.
Yep.
That's exactly what it reminded me of. And I'm sitting there, and my head would have been probably where his hips were. That's a big boy. Because if I'd have hit him, we'd have been, there's no way. We'd have all died. I know we would have. So it's just a big boy.
Yeah, the one that I saw, his legs were thick. I mean, we're talking like tree trunk, I would say at least, 10 inches across on both of them. And then there was enough gap in between his legs that I could see the tall grass, that grows alongside the highways. I could see that. So it was literally, with what I could see with my headlights, there was grass, leg, grass, leg, grass. And the grass was about, I want to say 3 foot high. So, I would say I was about 15 feet away from him. And so, I definitely saw 2 legs, but I didn't see the head or shoulders of the creature because it was above where I was sitting in my Jeep.
Wow.
And he was a darker colored one, more like a blackish.
Well, this one was like a reddish brown, and I've had reports of a reddish brown to blonde, skinny, tall one in the area. The person that told me this was the one that told me about them seeing them standing up in the tree on a big branch, looking at them while they were having a bonfire party and stuff, and would watch their kids. And their kids even told me, because I went out and talked to them. We met through a mutual friend. And I said, well, can we talk about what's been going on? And she told me everything that's going on. She said to her, they think it was a young one that was by itself. And it would play, like her kids said, because I interviewed her kids, and the kids were like, we play hide and seek with it. And I'm like, you do what? And where they live, there's a huge patch of woods behind their house. Now, they don't live there no more. They moved away. And if I'm a betting guy, I bet they moved away because this thing got a little too close one night to their house. I think they were like, well, we've had enough. And they moved further north away, almost out of the county. But the kids said they would play with it in the woods, hide and seek and stuff like that. Well, I guess one night it followed them home, and it was rattling at the back door and beating on the house, and the dog was going nuts, and they ran it off, you know. And then when they had a bonfire party, they were all sitting around out there, you know, and they were drinking, you know, and people saw it up in the tree, and they pointed it out, and I guess it realized that, oh man, they see me, I need to go, and it jumped out of that branch, out of the tree, off that branch, and hit the ground and was running away. And she said that was the last time they really ever saw him. So, but it was around their place for a little while, and I always made me think, wonder if it was the same one, because where I almost hit that one to where their place was, it'd be easy for something like that to travel in a day, easily.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people think that, you know, animals will stay just in one area, but you know, it's well known that wolves can cover over 50 miles in one day,
Yep.
just in a search for food or for a mate or, you know, water source. So, you know, that's you know, not unheard of. So I would think that a Sasquatch could easily have a 50-mile, you know, range where, you know, they move throughout the year, and depending on what's growing in what area, you know, they just move from food source to food source. And especially if, you know, if there's any type of construction going on or stuff like that, they have other areas that they move to. They don't just stay in one area. They might have a prime area where, you know, they consider it the best for nesting and, you know, food and stuff like that, and that they defend, but they don't stick within, you know, a 5-mile radius. They will actually, you know, go out and forage for their food and look for things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, my mother's even had, it's not been an encounter, but she heard something one night at our house when she was babysitting her kids when they were little. Me and my wife wanted to go out to dinner, and my mom come down and she watched the kids, and she said when the kids she got them down in bed, she stepped out on the front porch because she smokes, and she's never allowed to smoke in her house, and because my wife can't stand the smell of smoke, and so my mom's sitting out on the porch, freezing her butt off, smoking a cigarette, and she had the porch light on, and she said that there was this loud scream to the south of the neighborhood. She said it was real loud. A couple of them went off like that. She said the dogs started barking, and then they started crying, yelping and crying. She said, well, I just kind of threw the cigarette out in the front yard, went back in the house, locked the doors. So when I got home that night, she told me about it, and I said, well, come here, I want you to listen to something. So I pulled up on the computer, I pulled up the Sierra sounds. Have you ever heard those before?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Okay. Well, I pulled those up, and I let my mom listen to a couple sounds before that one. And then when I played the Sierra sounds for her, she's like, that's exactly what I heard. And I said, are you sure that's what you heard? I played it again. She goes, yep, that's exactly what screamed tonight. I said, okay. Well, go down the road a few years. My wife's uncle lives out on the east part of the county, got a nice little house back in the woods and stuff, and they have a outdoor wood burner. He was out there filling it up about dusk one night for the night so they'd stay warm, and he heard some screams, and it startled him really bad. He threw the last log in there, slammed the door, and he said, I ran to the house. Got in the house, locked the door, pulled the curtains. He said, because I would have froze that night. I would have went back out and put any more wood in. So I did the same thing with him. I let him listen to some sounds, then I played the Sierra sounds, and he had headphones on. And when I played the Sierra sounds, his eyes lit up. And he goes, that's it. That's exactly what I heard. I heard that exact sound. So I was like, wow. Well, down the road from his house, a few miles south, there's a big patch of woods, and I did a Google map check on it, and there are 2 domes, big piles of brush in the center of these, on each side of the pond in this wood. There's big woods, there's a pond in the middle, there's a big dome on one side and a big dome on the other side. They're made out of brush. And the guy that owns it there's no trespassing. He won't let anybody go back there and fish, can't hunt. He travels that whole area. That's all he owns, that whole big country block out there. And he's always checking things. And people told me he's got cameras set up out there and surveillance stuff. And it's just, it could be where he just, laid brush out there. But okay, my thinking is, why would you go into a woods when everybody knows that there's fallen limbs everywhere? What would possess you to build big old wooden domes? I mean, mounded up, circular top looking domes, you know what I mean? In the woods. You know what I'm saying? It don't make sense.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is if he was clearing the land and just got fed up at one point and said enough is enough and left it there.
But, still, though, it's in the woods.
Yeah.
There's not much land cleared there at all. I thought it was really strange. And then there's another place, the county north of where I live in. There's a dome structure on this guy's property, and we stumbled upon it, and he chased us off of it. I took some pictures of it before he got to us with my phone, and it's pretty good size. It's probably the size of my box truck, and it's probably 4 to 5 foot tall. There again, it's in the woods. It don't make sense why somebody would just, waste their time piling up sticks. Now, I could not see like an entrance to it or nothing, you know what I mean? I just found it very odd, so I took a picture of it. That's just what I do. I mean, if I can't figure it out myself or explain it myself, then I'll take a picture of it. But like I said earlier, I showed stuff to the DNR. I had a meeting with one night. I took him all my pictures. I took him all my evidence. He looked through everything. And when he got done looking at the pictures, he folded the book back up, handed it, slid across the table to me, said, "You have a good night, sir." Got up and walked away, and I thought that was really weird. He wouldn't tell me if he'd seen anything, heard anything, found prints, nothing. And he didn't even say, he said, "Have a good night, sir." And he got up and walked away. I was like, really? I just thought that was really peculiar why he wouldn't talk anymore after that.
Yeah, they don't really, DNR are usually pretty hush-hush about anything because they don't want people panicking and either going out, in massive groups into the woods and shooting everything, including each other, or, totally, avoiding the woods and, not buying any license or anything like that. So they kind of have to, keep a even, medium there of, what information they, want to out there and, what they're willing to say, yep, that's out there,
No, I get it. I understand it. I do, but I'm not going to go run to the presses and, hey, the DNR said Bigfoot's real.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I just, kind of look at me and give me a look like, yeah, you're onto something. We know it's okay. Don't let me sit there and look like an idiot, I guess. But I like I said, I've had a few encounters of my own things, and I've had more people tell me stuff. I got a friend of mine. His dad saw a black panther on his property. He called DNR about it. DNR told him he was seeing a fat black house cat, and they kind of made my buddy's dad a little mad. And so he said, "Well, I know which way it went. I'm going to get on my four-wheeler. I'm going to go after it, and I'm going to kill it." And he said by the time he got to his four-wheeler, got it started, got on it, was starting to go through the field, here come DNR. They stopped him. And they told him that they released 2 black panthers in our area to control, now get this, to control the population of coyotes and deer.
Well, a black panther is a bigger predator, right. And I have talked to different researchers who have had sightings of a black panther type, cat in Illinois, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. So they are out there, but I would think more that somebody else released it and they're just letting it do their job for them.
Yeah. Well,
because there's so many roadside zoos that or
Right.
private owners who import exotic cats and stuff like that, and then they get to the point where they can't take care of them, so they just think the solution is, I'll just take it and let it loose in the woods, and it'll find its way, and it won't cause any problems. And that's rarely the case.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because there's the county to the east of us. There was a lady that bought a baby mountain lion at a auction, a wildlife auction in Fort Wayne. This has been years ago. Years ago. She took it home and mothered it, and it got a little bit too big for her to handle, so she just let him go one day. Well, he ended up treeing a hunter in a tree, and the hunter luckily carried a sidearm with him, and he shot at it, and I don't know if he hit it or not, but it did run off. And I talked to the DNR officer that patrols that area, and he told me he made a fist with his hand. He said the prints were that big on the ground, and he did. It's out there, and we're trying to track it. We don't want to kill it. We'd like to be able to tranquilize it, and have it shipped out west or something. But he said it was a big cat, and it was a real story that it did exist in the area. And DNR, wildlife management, all them guys, they sweep stuff underneath the rug around here. There's been quite a few stories over the years that I've been told about. Timber wolf. They found a timber wolf in this town south of where I live. Had a radio collar on it from Wisconsin. They tranquilized it and shipped it back. Buddy of mine talked to the guy that found it, was going to shoot it with a shotgun and kill it because it was by a park where kids play. But I called the police, and the police had called DNR, and they went out there, and they tracked it and tranquilized it and shipped her back. Now, from Wisconsin. So, that thing traveled a good ways. The one story that I find very fascinating about is there was a black panther that was hit by a truck on a 2-lane highway not too far from my house, almost to where highway or Interstate 69 is. It was about 2 miles east of that, and the guy got on the radio and said, I just ran over the biggest black cat, if my truck I've ever seen. It was huge. And this lady had her scanner on, and she works at one of the stores that I deliver to, and she heard about it. And she thought, well, I'm not too far from there. I'm going to go check this out. Maybe he really hit a black panther. And so she got in her car, was headed out that way, and she said when she was coming up onto the scene, now get this, there was a DNR officer there in his SUV. There was another pickup truck there and a car, and there was 3 guys, a DNR officer, a guy with a pickup truck, and this guy standing there dressed in khaki clothes, big guy. She drove around it real slow. She could see the animal laying in the back of the truck, dead. They'd already scooped him up, and they were scrub brushing the highway. And they told her to move on, get on down the road. And she said, I just thought that was really strange. Why would you scrub brush the highway for a wild animal that got ran over? Never seen that. They don't do that around here.
Right.
Nobody does.
Right. Usually the dead animal just sits on the side of the road until something else comes along and drags it off and eats it.
Yeah, exactly. And she said, I just thought that was the strangest thing I've ever seen. She goes, I could see it was a cat. It had a long black tail. It had, cat paws on it and things. She goes, I could see it. It was laying in the back of the pickup truck. She said it was so big that they couldn't shut the tailgate. It was that long. So she said it just was really strange that they were, scrubbing the road. So, but I've got stories from all kinds of people in the area. There's a hog farm east of our where we live. Guy lost a couple of big prize hogs. Something that just tore them apart. Didn't really eat them, just ripped them to shreds and left them lay. But the strangest thing about that is they were in a barn. And the doors were closed. And this guy has been digging, what do you call those traps? They dig a hole in the ground. They put a false front or a false top on it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can't say it's eluding me now.
I know what you're talking.
Pitfall traps.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pitfall traps. He's got a few of those on his property. He's been putting out bear traps and stuff, game cameras, but he's caught nothing so far. So.
Yeah, it's weird how predators will do that. I remember when I was a child and we had 4-H rabbits, and the neighbor down the road had, I believe they were some type of fox that they were raising or whatever. Well, anyways, they got out and they actually came up onto our property, and they actually tore through the very well built, because my dad used to build cabinets and stuff like that. Very well built rabbit hutches that were 4 feet off the ground.
Huh.
And they totally tore apart the rabbit pens. And these were not, weakly built. They were built with 2x4s and with, strong gauge chicken wire that was, close, had the smaller holes in it. And they just tore these pens apart and took out all of our prized rabbits and killed them, but didn't eat them. They just tore them apart and then left them. They didn't eat anything off of them. They just tore them apart, and then went back to their own property where the people penned them back up. But it's it's interesting how predatory animals will do that. They will hunt for sport and for fun, and not necessarily for food. And I'm wondering if that's what was happening with the hogs, that you just mentioned, that they probably had their pick and choose of which ones to kill, and they just decided to have some fun with it.
Yeah. Well, they were some big hogs. Like I said, they were prize hogs, and they killed them both. One was substantially bigger than the other one. And then to the county east of where that happened, there was and I know this guy personally, he told me he lost 2 calves. They were mutilated. And they were out in the field, and he said they'd been, killed at night, and they were towards the back of the property, but he said they were just mutilated. They ended up digging a hole and just burying them. And supposedly he took pictures of them, but he's yet to find the pictures up yet. He's not showed them to me, but he said it was pretty bad. He said they weren't even ate on; they were just tore apart, like for fun almost. So, and I'm kind of thinking, well, if it's Bigfoot's going to eat. Bigfoot like to eat.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'd be a dogman or if you just got a couple of mountain lions or black panthers or something. But I just don't get why they just kill it and leave it. It's just weird,
Well, I mean, if you look at like your typical house cat, we have house cats, and I watch them, catch the occasional mouse, and they don't kill it right away. They play with it and play with it and play with it until either it has a heart attack or they just kill it. But then the game's over. They don't eat it. They don't, necessarily show any more interest into it. They just walk away. So it's almost for their amusement. And then once it's dead, it's of no use to them anymore. We just, we'll find a mouse dead, and there's nothing, eaten off of it. It's just dead because the cats have literally, played with it till the mouse either had a heart attack or died of exhaustion.
Yeah. Well, people think that like we can't get mountain lions out here and stuff like that, and it's like
we have them in Michigan. We have them in Michigan.
Yeah.
They come down and.
Camera. So yeah, they're here. I've seen them. I saw one coming home from work in the afternoon off the same 2-lane highway where that black panther was supposedly was hit. I saw one trotting along the tree line there by the woods going north, and it wasn't no dog. It was a mountain lion.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I believe
mine saw the same thing.
I believe about 5 years ago, there was a report of a mountain lion that was roaming around Detroit area. And people were like, no, 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 you guys are making this up, until actual footage showed up and the DNR became involved. And so, yeah, just because humans are in a populated area does not mean that wildlife will not, come walking down the street.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like I said, over the years, I've seen some things, gotten stories. I've took a lot of pictures of prints and trackways and stuff like that. And that reminds me. I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you this. Here's something that happened to us on that same public land that we used to hunt. We went down there in September one year to do a little scouting to find a spot to set up for. And we were coming down that same 4x4 trail that goes east and west of this property. And we come across two gigantic dead trees, okay? I mean, probably had to be 75 foot long, each one of them, easily. They're dead. They're big, bulky, dead trees. Well, this 4x4 trail that goes east and west of this property has a ridge on each side of it. These trees had been pulled down, okay, drug down each ridge. They had been interlocked. The limbs have been interlocked like you would interlock your fingers on both your hands together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got pictures of all this. And me and my buddy, we're both big guys. We couldn't budge one of them trees. I mean, we couldn't do it. And I looked them over real good. I looked for chain marks. I looked for strap marks. I walked up each ridge, looked to see if they'd been cut with a saw. I mean, what they look like is when you have a strong wind come through, like a straight wind,
yes,
and say it blows over a dead tree, and sometimes it'll take the root ball with it. Sometimes it may won't, depending on how dead the actual trunk is. Well, these had the root ball still hooked to them. It's like something that pulled them down off there where they were, drug them down the ridge a little bit, and just locked them in, like saying, "Hey, you can't go past here no more." Blocking the lane.
Yeah, that would be interesting to find out why they do that, because I've heard of reports all over the world where trees are pulled up from their roots, but then they're tipped over and driven back down into the ground, so that the roots are sticking up, and where you'd have the leaves and the branches is sticking into the ground. And but they do that with all different kinds of trees. And I don't know if that is a territory mark, of, hey, this is my territory, don't come any further. But that must, be towards other Sasquatches, because as humans, we're still trying to figure out what that means. So I don't know if that would be a warning towards us as human beings or not.
I don't know either, but it was amazing to see that. I mean, the strength it would take to take them two trees and just interlock them, the limbs like that was. And I showed the pictures to a couple friends of mine. They're big time skeptics about everything in the world, really. And they were like, "Oh man, that's just Mother Nature. Mother Nature can do crazy things, and they just fell right." Well, here's the thing: there was no broken limbs anywhere where they would have fell. A dead tree gets knocked over is going to have some broken limbs. Period. These weren't broken. There was not broken limbs anywhere. And we went back to the station, where the DNR station, and told the chick that was sitting there manning it for the day what we saw, and she said, "Okay, well, we'll send somebody out there." So we come back the very next day, and they cut them all up with a chainsaw and let them lay in the ditch. So I thought that was okay. That was a little weird, but you didn't think anything about investigating how it got that way, so But yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff that goes on. I went out to my buddy's place last night to hunt coyotes with him because he's having a coyote issue. And I took some pictures of some abnormally large prints, 3-toed and 4-toed. Can't tell what it really is, if it's, dogman, coyote, bigfoot. I mean, there's just different sizes, different shapes. I just take pictures for some, just to have some kind of evidence. But we were sitting there, and I was sitting on the south side of the property, and he was up on the north side, and it was getting pretty dark, and I heard a really It was way off in the distance to the west, but it was a loud howl, like a wolf howl. It was pretty creepy, really. I've never heard something like that in this area before. And it just one long drag out howl, and that was the end of it. And we didn't see not a one coyote at all last night. We heard them to the south yelp a few times, but they never come around his property. I don't know if they winded me or him or what it was, but they weren't having coming up on his property last night for nothing in the world. But the reason why we were out there is the night before, him and his wife were walking around their property. They got like a little mini farm, homestead kind of deal.
Uh-huh.
And they were walking on the south side of the property, just him and her, talking, and it was a nice night, just enjoying the night and stuff. And he said they heard some noise, some movement in front of them, and then they noticed some shadowing. So he got his phone out and took some pictures, and he got eye shine on the pictures. Well, he said it started out about 3-4 foot off the ground is where the eye shine was. And I said, okay. He said, I thought maybe it was some deer or something, coming through our property. A little fawn or whatever, doe, buck, whatever it could be. He said, until it stood up. And I said, stood up? He said, yeah, it stood up like a man. Okay. So I told him, I said, I want to come over tomorrow night when I get off work, and he actually took the picture. The one picture he's got has scale in front of the eye shine, which I thought, that's great. That'll give me some dimensions on how high these eyes were off the ground. So I went over last night, and I measured. It was a hay wagon, flatbed hay wagon, and it had a big long tongue on it hooked to the tractor. So I measured from the ground all the way to the very tip of that tongue in the air, and it was 7 foot exactly. So I looked at that picture, and I put a straight edge across that picture, and that the tallest set eyes was about 6 foot, 6.5, almost 7 foot, right in that area. And I told him, because he goes, well, maybe it was a deer. And I said, Bud, if that was a deer, I said, that's one big, gigantic buck.
That's more like a moose.
Yeah. And that's what I told him. I said, it could be an elk, because we have an elk farm not too far from where we were, and his elk have gotten out a couple times. And one of them got out and they never found it. I think somebody shot it and quartered it out and kept it to themselves. That's what I think. He never did find that one elk, but his elk and his moose, and I think he had some bison years ago. They've gotten out, animal break through a fence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I think for the most part he's gotten them back, except for that one. And I told him, I said, I don't think it was one of those. I said, but you're telling me that it just stood up. He said, yeah. He said it was weird. The big one stood up, the medium-sized one stood up, and then he said the little one finally stood up. And he said, they just sat there looking at each other. He said, I got a little uneasy, and we decided it was time to get back to the house, so we scurried back to the house. So I went out there looking for prints. I couldn't find any prints. The ground out there is kind of hard, and it's got those weeds growing through it. It's tall grass, almost like alfalfa or whatever. It's just weird. I found a print. I don't know what it could be. I just thought it was a strange print. So there again, I took a picture. But that was our encounters for last night. I mean, we sit out there for an hour or two, and, he said they usually, like clockwork, will come in between, 8 and 9 o'clock. He said they'll hit our property, like almost every night. And we sat there till after 9, and nothing. We didn't see one coyote. So, but so far, that's what's kind of going on out here. That's what we got going on. There's some strange creatures out here. I've always believed in Bigfoot. My uncle lived in Michigan almost all his life. He lived Lansing, Michigan. I don't know how close you are to that.
Lansing's about, well, depending on the traffic, between 45 minutes to an hour west of where I am. I'm in Livingston County, so I'm centrally located between like Lansing, Detroit, Flint, and Ann Arbor. So to get to any of those ones, you have to kind of pass through, the Brighton area. So
right. Well, he lived in Lansing. He had about 10 acres, and But he used to go up north with some buddies, northern Peninsula, and hunt. They had some land up there they could hunt on. And I can remember my uncle telling my other uncles when we had family get-togethers down here in Indiana, he went up there one time with his buddies, and he was way up in a tree stand, and he's been sitting up there for an hour or so, and the sun had just kind of come up finally, and he said he heard movement to the right of him, and he just sat still because he thought, well, maybe it's got a buck or deer or something coming in. Could have been a bear, he said, but you just didn't know. And he sat there real quiet. He wouldn't move, and he said all of a sudden the noise got louder and louder and louder, and he said, out past this group of trees, he said, walked this big black Bigfoot. And my uncles used to make fun of him all the time, and I felt bad for him. But he told the story word for word every time he told it.
Mm-hmm.
Walked out from the right, walked out in front of him, says about 30 yards out. He said it was black. He said black as a tire, jet black. He said, he told my uncles, he said, I'm telling you right now, it was every bit of 10 foot tall. Every single bit of it. He watched it eat some berries. There were some berry bushes for him. He said it took his time and ate a bunch of berries, walked around the berry bushes, and he sniffed the air. He said, I was scared to death. He said, this whole encounter took about 15 minutes. He said, I couldn't move. He said, I had to pee so bad. I was so scared. I just sat there in that tree stand as still as I could sit. Finally, it started walking away towards the left, his left, and then it turned and went straight away from him. And he said, I could hear it walking and walking. He said, it was probably 75 to 100 yards away from me. He said, but I could still hear the footsteps. I could still hear the noise, the branches breaking, whatever it was doing. He said, I stood in that tree, or sat in that tree stand until I couldn't hear him. He said that I eased down out of that tree stand, and I got my feet on the ground. He said, I walked real careful away a few yards from the tree. And he said, then I just kind of realized I'm going to make a run for it. I want to go back to the truck. He left his stand and everything there. He ran back to the truck. He threw his shotgun in the back of the truck, hopped in it, started up, drove off. He said, I never went back. Never went back to that land. Went straight home.
Yeah,
left all the stuff.
The UP, for people who have never been to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and well, it runs into Wisconsin too. It is almost perfect for any type of Bigfoot, dogman, because it's all forest. It's all wild territory. There, you do have a couple, of good-sized towns up there, but it's a lot of wide forested areas with freshwater lakes on both sides of it. You've got Lake Superior on the top and then Lake Michigan on the lower part of it. And then there's rivers and streams that run, and inland lakes all through it. But there's plenty of wildlife. There's plenty of naturally occurring fruits and vegetables. So I would say that would be probably the best area in the Great Lakes area for Bigfoots and Sasquatches and dogman to live.
Yeah. I think they could, honestly, my opinion, I'm very optimistic about a lot of things in this world, but I really feel like a Bigfoot and a dogman could live anywhere they wanted, to be honest with you.
Yeah, pretty much. If you've got any areas where you have, like apple orchards or fruit orchards or cornfields or any type of farm where deer can go to eat, then you have the potential for the Bigfoots or the dogmen to be nearby, because one food system sustains another. And so it's only natural that if you have, you could have a big city like Detroit, but on the outskirts of Detroit, there are farms, there are orchards, there are, nurseries. And in those areas, you have deer populations. And so as long as the deer have something to eat and live off of, the Sasquatches and dogmen have something to live off of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's a cycle of life, that's all it is. But yeah, there's just a lot of weird things happen out here. I just never would have believed it where we live. But the more and more stuff that I see and hear and get told about, I just, what else could it really be, I mean, I just it just blows me away actually. So I know my son he told me a few nights ago. He's like, Dad. He said when I try to go to sleep at night, he said I swear I hear something on a roof walking. And I was like, well, if you hear it again, just ease up out of bed and just quietly come get me, and we'll go investigate it. He said he goes I've heard growls at my window and tapping at my window and stuff like that. So, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's. I don't think it'd be a Bigfoot. I think that we possibly have a dogman in the area. This is my belief, my opinion. I think we do, because the prints that I took matched some other prints that were took in Toledo and stuff. So I don't know if you know about the North American Dogman Project or not.
Actually, I am the chapter head for Michigan.
Okay. I've been dealing with the lady that does it here for Indiana.
Jen.
I've been Jen Jacobs.
Yep, I'm very good friends with Jen Jacobs.
Yeah, I've been telling her things, and the more and more stuff that goes on, and the more we talk about it, I'm pretty certain we probably got one in the area, and he's been in the area for the last couple of years. Last summer, and I told Jen this, and I've been around animals all my life. Cats, dogs, horses, cows. I like being outside. I like animals. They're great. This is our third dog. Well, my third dog, but our first dog as a family. Me and my son took him out one day last summer, walking around the neighborhood. This nice day, and as we started our walk, he went across the street to the neighbors that we find the prints on all the time. It's abandoned.
Uh-huh.
And there's a little like lilac bush there, and he started sniffing around that bush, and he started to yell. He started to cry, whine and cry. And he tucked his ears down, tucked his tail. He walked up behind me and got between my legs and would not move. We couldn't take him for a walk. I have never in my life seen a dog act like that. The only thing I could think of is that there's some big bad alpha predator male that urinated on that bush, and he got a good whiff of it and realized, there's something bad here.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't go for a walk that day. We just took him back in the house. I walked over that bush and I could smell something. I mean, it smelled. Don't get me wrong. It stunk. But I wasn't about to touch anything, see if it was wet or not. But it scared him. I thought it was just really strange how he acted. And he stayed in. We had to take him out in the backyard, let him out and do his business. We stood out there with him, but he wouldn't go out front that day, and he wouldn't go on a walk around the neighborhood. It just something bothered him really bad about that bush. So like I said, it's strange things that are going on out here. It's just really strange. So, but when I go out, I got, my ears are open, my eyes are open. I'm looking around. When we go scouting or hunting, hiking, whatever, I got the phone with me. I pack my gun with me, and I'm trying to stay as alert as I possibly can to my surroundings.
And that's the best thing you can do when you go out into the woods. I so many times when I'm out hiking, if I do come across another person, they have headphones on, or they're doing something on their phone, and it's like, no, the woods is the last place that you want to be like indulging in social media. You really need to be self-aware when you're in the woods, because not only do you have the normal animal predators that you might run into, but you have human predators, and you have the cryptid predators too. So you have to pay attention when you're out in the woods, and listen to what's going on around you. Watching the trail around you. It's just so important.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I don't get people that go jogging. Like, we got this Cardinal Greenway trail that runs through our county, and it's for biking and jogging and walking and stuff. And I see so many people when the weather's nice. Don't get me wrong. You want to go jogging, you got your headphones in, you want to listen to your music or listen to a book or something. I get it. But sometimes, when you're jogging down that thing by yourself, there's sections of it that are a little eerie, especially in the evenings. It's like I don't think I'd want to be listening to music or whatever and not be able to hear something coming up behind me.
Right, right.
And it's just, and I don't do that stuff. If I get on there biking or walking or whatever, I don't. I got my phone in my pocket, but I'm not listening to nothing. I'm enjoying the nature. I want to look around and see stuff, and the birds and raccoons and everything else that you can see or whatever, But and there's been things that's happened on that trail that's been kept quiet too. Not animal related, but how things get swept underneath the rug. But it's just a lot of strange things going on out here over the last couple of years. Sometimes can't make heads or tails of it, but I'm trying to stay alert as I can. And I told my neighbor next to me, I said, you call me anytime, day or night. You hear something, see something, I don't care what time it is. You call me and I'll be right there. So I wish the snow would have stayed on and I could have looked over that fence and see how big those prints were and how far the stride was. I'm not saying the man's lying. I'm not calling him a liar. He's a good man. But if it was full stride at 12 foot from print to print, wow, that's insane. That's a big something.
Yeah.
And it's weird, I just grew up all my life and out in this area, and I here over the last few years, things keep getting more and more and more. So, but that's about all I know for now. So
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show today and telling me about your experiences and your encounters. Very, very interesting. And I know that there is, just from talking to Jen, who we mentioned earlier, I do know that there is quite a bit of dogman and Bigfoot activity down in northern Indiana. So I think that you're seeing potentially both of them down there, and good luck with evidence collecting. I would love to see what if you ever do get any pictures of them or other evidence.
yeah, I told Jen I'd keep her posted on stuff, and I've been meaning to get some time together to make up like an evidence file and just make copies of pictures and send some out to people that like Jen and Jody and stuff, and I'll try to send something to you. It just how life is, it just gets in the way sometimes. And with all this corona crap going on right now, I'm working crazy hours, and we got a grandson we watch every once in a while, and when we got him for 2 or 3 days straight, and he's got more energy than me, and I can't even keep up with him.
Yeah, that's the thing with those youngins. They just come pre-powered with immense energy and.
Oh gosh, I'd love to have some of it right now. It'd be great. But yeah, I will definitely. I got your info. I'll keep you updated as well, and I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a good time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.